Good morning, students. In my last lecture, I taught you about the significant Indian English poets. In this video, I'll be talking about Indian English fiction. Now, fiction was actually a late development. It was the last to arrive on the Indian English literary scene, and the earliest works they were published in the form or in the way of translation and other propagandistic pamphlets. Even the Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who is considered as the pioneer of the Renaissance, he has written prose pieces but not fiction. The other freedom fighters of the times, like Surendranath Banerjee, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Tilak, they have also written prose but not novel. Their contribution is chiefly and basically to the journals. Bankim Chand Chatterjee's English novel Raj Mohan's Wife appeared in the Calcutta Weekly. As I told you before, that the novel was not originally published in the book format, it was actually serialized in these journals and in these pamphlets. Like this particular novel, Raj Mohan's Wife, it was serialized in the Calcutta Weekly. He has also written other novels like Kapal Kundal, Durgesh Nandini, Krishna Kanswil, but they all were translated into English from the Bengali. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee always asserted that I am a teacher or nothing. He always wrote with the missionary zeal, and he was inspired by the works of Walter Scott. If we talk about his masterpiece, it is Anand Mat, from where we get our national song Vande Matram, which continues to inspire millions of youths in India. Now, the major influences in the field of novel writings were Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, Rabindranath Tagore, and Sharat Chandra. Now, Rabindranath Tagore was primarily a poet, but he has also written novels like Chokher Bali, Gora, The Wreck, and also the short stories like The Kabuliwala, The Postmaster, Homecoming, My Fair Neighbor. He was also a dramatist, so, although he was primarily a poet, but he has also written dramas and novels and poems, etc. And later translated them. Originally, he wrote them in Bengali. Afterwards, he translated them into English. Basically, all his novels are political in nature, and he was not happy with the narrow political concerns of the time that were dominating the Indian literary scene, that were dominating the Indian political life then. So, like in his novel Gora, he presents his liberal global humanistic views. If we talk about the other novelist, Ramesh Chandra Dutt, he has also written in Bengali and later translated his novels. His famous novels are The Lake of Palms and The Slave Girl of Agra. If we talk about the women novelists of the time, you would be uh, although it's not strange to consider that women were writing at that time when it was considered when education was not that common. Only prestigious families, only women who came from prestigious families can afford the right to education. Toru Dutt has written poems as well as only one novel. His novel was Bianca, the young Spanish maiden, and it was set in a rural England, and it is basically a romantic love story, but it is an unfinished novel. It was left unfinished due to her death. Another women novelists of the time were Krupa Bai and Shevanti Bai. Now, the influence of Gandhiji in the English literary scene and in the Indian atmosphere was all pervading. His thoughts and his philosophy also impacted Indian English writing. In fact, I would say that there was not any field which was not influenced, there was hardly any field which was not even influenced by Gandhian ideology. In some novels, he appears as a person, but in other novels too, his presence can be felt. So he appears as a figure of a myth or a symbol or as a tangible reality among so many novels. His ideology, his thoughts have been, of course, represented in various novels of the time. Like in Raja Rao's Kanthapura, he does not appear as a person, but his presence could be felt. R.K. Narayan wrote Waiting for Mahatma. In this novel, Gandhiji appears as a person and he fights against the untouchability. Other novels like Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, Inqalab, Bhavni Bhattacharya novel So Many Hungers, Nayantara Sehgal's novel A Time to Be Happy, they all are post independent novels, but we can see the influence of Gandhiji in all these novels. And like the major trio, Mulk Raj Anand, R.K. Narayan, and Raja Rao, even they were influenced by the ideologies of Gandhiji. If I talk about Mulk Raj Anand, here I want to mention the incidents that shaped Anand's life, or you could say that transformed him completely. Now, the first incident was the death of his cousin. The second incident was the suicide of his aunt, because the aunt, she was ostracized. She was she was eventually ostracized from the society because of her friendship with the Muslim woman. So, an incident like this, it even led to her suicide. And the third event was Mulkraj Anand's own arrest and lathi charge during a curfew at the time of Jallianwala Bagh massacre in, I think, 1919. If we talk about the themes, he has basically dealt with the poor and oppressed. He has great sympathy for the untouchables, the peasants, the coolies, and other downtrodden people of the society. He was also influenced by the Vedantic philosophy. If we talk about his novels, about his significant novels, Untouchable, Coolie, Two Leaves and a Bud, Sword and the Sickle, The Big Heart, Across the Black Waters, The Private Life of an Indian Prince and the Village, etc. These are some of the prominent novel of Mulkraj Anand. So, as I have talked, as I told you earlier, that he has basically great sympathy for the poor. He talks about their miseries. He has, of course, great sympathy for them. And it was indeed a bold step, a revolutionary step to choose a sweeper boy as your protagonist. So, in the novel, like Untouchable, the hero is a sweeper boy known as, or he is called Bakha. So he is a sweeper and he is the protagonist of the novel. So this is a shift which Anand takes, and this is indeed a revolutionary step. In his novels, all the people, all the downtrodden, they have been portrayed realistically and poignantly. Now, if we talk about R.K. Narayan, he is all-time favorite and the most popular novelist of Indian English literature. He was born in South India and all his novels are based on the life of South India. In fact, he even created a microcosm of South Indian life in his fictional town Malgudi. We all are well aware of the serial Malgudi Days and Swami and Friends, which was serialized on Doordarshan. His works are not philosophical, He wanted people to enjoy his work. So, in Narayan's work, you'll not find any you'll not find any teaching, or because he's not up to preaching anything. He's not even trying to express any particular philosophy, because this is not his interest. His main concern was readability. If people are enjoying his work, if they are readable, if they are relatable, then that is the, I think, the best measure of success according to R.K. Narayan. And if you'll read Narayan's novel, you can easily relate to them. You'll laugh at some of the incidents, you'll even cry at the incidents. So I think there is some connection between the reader and the novel. So I think you must need some of the prominent novels of R.K. Narayan. Some of the novels: Swami and Friends, The Dark Room, The English Teacher. Now, The English Teacher was basically autobiographical in nature. It tells about his tragic married life and the further development of Narayan. The Financial Expert, The Guide, and The Winter of Sweets. These are some of the novels. I haven't mentioned all the novels of Narayan. I only mentioned some of the famous novels of Narayan. Now, The Guide was it received the Sahitya Academy Award, and it was even adapted into a film. Devanand was the hero, as I think you know this. Now, if I talk about the Malgudi, if you'll read his novels, you'll find the fictional town Malgudi with its main landmarks like the river Saryu, the hills, its jungles, and even the characters. If I talk about the characters of Narayan, they he has portrayed them vividly. He has present various facets of human nature. The characters are good, they are comic, they are bad. So uh, you'll find every sort of character in his novels. Raja Rao is considered as the most prolific and brilliant writer of Indian English literature. He was not only influenced by the Indian Vedanta but by Italian, French, German, and Russian literature. He was born into an Orthodox Brahmin family, and he was aware of the Indian philosophy, and Indian spirituality is also reflected in his works. Because of his deep study into the Indian spiritual traditions, because of his influence, because it impacted him deeply, therefore, he has also depicted all these tendencies in his novels. Some of his famous novels are The Serpent and the Rope, Kanthapura, The Cat and the Shakespeare. Now, Kanthapura is also prescribed in our course. It tells about, um, actually, he terms it as a Sthal Puran, and Kanthapura was his first novel, yes, which depicts the Indian social, political, and religious aspects of the Indian village. He has even portrayed the Gandhian revolution. Now, Murthy is the protagonist, and under his influence, the whole village awakens and take part in the Indian nationalistic struggle. Now, the greatest achievement of Raja Rao is his style, which expresses his Indian sensibility. He has used English in the most original way, and he has even used it successfully. In his foreword to Kanthapura, he says that English is not an aligned language for him. If we talk about his characters, they are drawn from different sections of society. They are even European in background, and basically they are usually Brahmins. Bhavni Bhattacharya was yet another prominent Indian novelist of the time. His famous novels were So Many Hungers, He Who Rides a Tiger, Music for Mohini, A Goddess Named Gold, So in novels like So Many Hungers and He Who Writes a Tiger, he has talked about Bengal. He has talked about the famine. He has talked about the ruthless and inhumanity of the hoarders who are only concerned about making profit. His other novels, like A Goddess Named Gold, it is basically a satire on mammon worship. Now, Shadows from Ladakh won him prestigious Sahitya Academy Award, and the novel is about the Indian struggle with China in 1962. Now, if we talk about the views of Bhavani Bhattacharya, he believed that art must teach, but unobtrusively by its vivid interpretation of life, and art must preach, but only by virtue of its being a vehicle of truth. A novel must have a social purpose. It must place before the reader something from the society's point of view. So I think this is the beauty of literature, that it always teaches you something. It gives you values to rely on. Without literature, or I think without these values, we are nothing. Now, the partition of the Indian subcontinent was another event that triggered the nation. It was definitely the greatest upheaval of the century. If we talk about the Khushwant Singh in Train to Pakistan, he presents the horror of partition and the growing communal tensions in the border village Manu Majra. Train to Pakistan was the first novel written in English about the partition of the Indian subcontinent. In this novel, he talks about the growing communal disharmony, about the growing tension in the village life, and how the age old friendship was turned into enmity. Another prominent novels on the partition were Manohar Malgaonkar's A Bend in the Ganges, Chaman Nahal's Azadi, Atya Hussain Sunlight on a Broken Column, Bhishma Sahani's Tamas, Bapsi Sadhwa's Ice Candy Man. Now, Bapsi Sadhwa was a Pakistani Parsi writer. I have included even her name in the uh, in the Indian English fiction, because here I am talking about the partition of the Indian subcontinent. So even the writers from even Pakistani writers are also included in this list. Kartar Singh Duggal's Twice Born, Twice Dead. So these are some of the novels which deal with the traumatic incidents of partition. Now, the women novelists of the time, because of their presence, because of their writings, they were able to enrich the Indian English literature. Kamla Markandeya, Nayantara Sehgal, Anita Desai, Atya Hussain, Bharti Mukherjee, they all have presented women's world very poignantly, and they have their own individual style of writing. They have presented, or they have even included satire and irony in their works when they talk about the outdated custom and the tendency that have suffocated women so in the society. Anita Desai's and Nayantara Sehgal, they all go beyond feministic concerns, and they've talked about the theme of alienation in the modern Indian society. Now, Kamala Markandeya's famous novel, Nectar in a Sea, it deals with the theme of hunger and starvation in Indian villages. नेक्टर जो है अमृत को बोलते हैं एंड सी बोलते हैं छलनी को. सो अगर किसी भी लिक्विड को हम छलनी में डालेंगे तो क्या होगा, डेफिनेटली वो निकल जाएगा छलनी में से. सो दिस इज द थीम. What will happen if you pour a liquid or a nectar into a sea? That will definitely flow down. So, this is the basic theme of the novel, that happiness and hope, this is transient, this is temporary in the life of poor, downtrodden people in rural India. So for a brief moment, for a brief period of time, happiness occurs in their life, but after that, miseries, wretchedness is all that awaiting their destinies. So she was a prolific writer. She has dealt with the despair, ruined love, and her novel Nectar in a Sea. It talks about the theme of hunger and starvation in Indian villages. Her other novels are A Silence of Desire, The Nowhere Man, etc. Some Inner Fury. She was also writer of some Inner Fury. Now, Anita Desai has deep psychological insight into her characters. She's also concerned about the predicament of women in male dominated society. So, Anita Desai's Voices in the City has been prescribed in a course. Now, it depicts the plights and psychotic life of Monisha. Monisha is the protagonist, and the city, Calcutta, has been described as beastly, as bloodthirsty. The theme of depression and disillusionment, you could find the theme of depression in the novels of Anita Desai. She was basically concerned about the frustration and about the neurotic conditions of women, and she has also dealt successfully in many novels like Cry the Peacock. The protagonist is the Maya, and in all these novels, you could say that her novel are manifesto of female predicament. Now, if we talk about her other novels like In Custody and Clear Light of the Day and Bye Bye Blackbird, you'll find the women protagonists fighting or even revolting against the society. Nayantara Sehgal was the niece of a former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. She was the daughter of Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. So, because of her political background, she has seen this political life so closely that all her novels are set in the political scenario. She is a gifted writer whose main concerns are human values and complex human relationships. You'll also find the theme of freedom and democratic ideals. Famous novels are Rich Like Us, A Time to Be Happy, Storm in Chandigarh. Now, Rich Like Us earned her prestigious Sahitya Academy Award. And in most of her novels, you'll find the theme of this freedom. Another novel, now I would like to talk about Rama Mehta's novel Inside the Haveli. It is also prescribed in our course. Now, Inside the Haveli, it tries and it attempts to portray the dilemma of a woman caught between tradition and the desire to be free. Now, it could be called the fictionalization of Parda culture. Its main protagonist is Geeta, and she comes from a liberal family background. So, what happens when she comes into contact, or when she is married into a traditional, into a conventional family, into a life of Parda? So, her journey, her transformation has been depicted in the novel, and at last, she accepts her fate, she accepts the status in the Haveli, and she finds peace through deference. Shashi Deshpande's novels, The Dark Holds No Terror, That Long Silence, and Small Remedies, they talk about women's predicament. They talk, even her female protagonists like Indu, like Jaya, they all try desperately to fit into that image of a perfect ideal woman. Early early in the novels, these all women, they try to fit into that image, and afterwards these female protagonists, they even question this image when they realize their role, when they realize themselves, when they realize their self alienation from the society. They even question that image, that role which has been prescribed by the society for the women. Now, Arundhati Roy was yet another novelist who earned the prestigious Booker Prize with her debut novel, The God of Small Things. It was published in 1997. Now, it is the story of a Syrian Christian family in a small town of Kerala. It is a story of the twins Rahel and Esther. So, they both are the protagonists. They are twins. Now she has even used the stream of consciousness technique in the unconventional manner. Now the narration of the novel, it takes part or it takes action in the it takes actually the novel is set in a time, or it is basically it takes time. It actually it is a constant shipping back and forth between different time frames. Now the past action, they act as a main narrative while the present only serves as a micro narrative. Other famous women novelists were Shobha De, Namita Gokhale, Brinda Mukherjee, Geeta Mehta. So this was all about Indian English fiction. That's all for today. Thank you.